regular school board meeting. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
Here.
Mr. Guido,
Here.
Mr. Leeds,
Here.
and Mrs. Stone.
Here.
And Mr. Carpenter's absent.
Yes. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1.3, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We recommend an addition of 6.11, which is approval of a one-to-one nursing contract with Butler County ESC.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 1.4, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Section 2, discussions and comment from the board. Mr. Leeds, item 2.1, Legislator.
Okay, I've got a couple things tonight. First of all, the big thing in Columbus, of course, is the mask deal. If you haven't heard about it, there are several bills in front of the legislature that are going to tie our hands. And one of them is House Bill 248. House Bill 248 that will prohibit mandatory vaccinations, vaccination status disclosures, and other actions regarding vaccinations. House Bill 253, prohibit proof of COVID vaccinations. Senate Bill 209, prohibit mask mandates by public schools, colleges, and businesses. And House Bill 350 will prohibit mandatory COVID vaccinations. These are bills that the legislature is working on, and supposedly they are on the fast track to be made into law. So that's what we're dealing with, and you can see where we are with the schools.
What were the numbers of those bills?
248, is House Bill 248, House Bill 253, Senate Bill 209, and House Bill 350.
Thank you.
And then the other thing is the legislature is giving our money away faster than they can give it to us to vouchers. So that's, we're going to have a fight in the next 2 years to get our monies to retain the monies that we're getting this year over and above what we got last year. So it's going to be crucial that we keep hammering the legislatures anytime we can to let them know that we ain't playing any game. So that's all I have.
Well, I think the one thing, to echo what you said, I think the one thing that we do have in our corner finally is George Lang.
Yes, we do.
Because he's definitely is willing to go to Matt for us.
Right.
So which is a good thing.
Right.
So, all right, thank you. Mr. Guido, 2.2, Butler Tech.
I want to let you guys know that I did receive my invitation for the all boards meeting. It'll be September 28th at the D. Russell Lee campus. Robert, I don't know if Warren County did this, but Butler Tech sponsors a all school boards meeting, and it's quite a show. So we did lose last year in the student showcase. So, and Fairfield has been bragging quite handily about that. So we need to, if they do that again, we need to make sure that we do that.
Okay.
So all you got to do is drive by the new building. Lots going on there. The barn addition, I believe it's completed. I know the horses are in there now, so that's an exciting thing. I did want to take a second and thank Holly. Butler Tech, Monroe, and Lakota Schools is involved in a grant to provide broadband service to students in a couple target communities. And Holly has been, I guess, the grant coordinator. Is that your title of that?
That's correct.
It's a big deal because it is federal funds, and it is a bigger responsibility than she probably thought it would be. So thank you for that. And it's going to offer broadband to people that don't have access to any of it. So it's just a target program that we're hopeful to expand throughout Butler County. And again, Monroe, Butler Tech, and Lakota have really taken charge of that. So again, thank you. And then one other thing I want to explain for next year, the how you get accepted into programs at Butler Tech has changed. Previous years, students applied and then they had to do an interview. And so they sat down face to face and were interviewed by the instructor for that particular program. The ODE came in and said that there was a risk of exclusion, and so they have changed that. So now it is a lottery. As you're aware, we've turned away several hundred students that apply for those programs. So it's 100% luck of the draw from now on. One thing that is going to possibly help that is the releasing of capped funding. And so, our goal at Butler Tech is to provide services and programming to all students that apply to go into those programs. So we don't want to turn anybody away, but funding is an issue. And so hopefully, we'll make this more than a biennium budget matter and get rid of capped, which affects Monroe as well. So it's something that we have fought hard through the legislators, and will continue to do so as well. So I've personally done it on behalf of Butler Tech, but also for Monroe. So it's something that we obviously are all very aware of and want to continue for that. So
You said that goes into effect next year?
yeah. And then lastly, I am going to Washington, D.C. again in October. So that's our annual legislator visit. We have visits set up with several senators and state or congressmen out there. So I'll let you know. We've never done that, but so really how this usually works, Dave, is there is a career tech national policy seminar where career tech centers from all over the country come over to DC, and we have a conference we attend, and then we have scheduled days that we all go to the Hill and have one-on-one meetings with all the representatives. So this is the first time that we're going mid-year. We're going to try something a little bit different. COVID stopped us from going last year, so and it's been a while since we've seen them. But
Find out if anyone else can attend besides
Yeah,
career
I will.
tech, 'cause if so, I would like to attend.
well, there is a regular school board kind of Stump the Hill meeting and I checked into that a couple years ago, but then again, COVID got into the way. But I would highly recommend, and we're pretty active as a board with our state legislators and our local representatives, but again, to be on the national platform and really take a cause there. Really the key is to establish a relationship with these people, and don't just go ask for money, be a resource to them, and then it goes from there. That's it.
Thank you. 2.3, finance.
Got a couple things we're going to submit tonight. First thing I'm going to update you on, we've received now more than $3.8 million in federal grants. The funds to be spent this year and continue, we can spend them up to 2024. But as with all grants, there are restrictions, and all of these must be spent on additional instruction for our students. These grants may also be used to contract with social workers and mental health professionals, which we've been using some of those funds for those type of services, but all the funds will be focused on providing additional services for our students and not just during the school year. but offering programs in the summer as well. We don't want our students falling behind in learning. We're trying to make every effort to ensure they continue to show progress and all where they should be in learning, and even better than that, actually. And this is an opportunity also for us to provide some more help for our English learning students, students with disabilities, and students throughout all grades who may be struggling. It's an opportunity to address mental health issues that many of our students have experienced throughout, especially this course of the pandemic. So we hope to see a lot of good come from these grants. It's great to have that. Unfortunately, they will, it will run out. So just kind of a reminder. Also, we want to thank our legislators for their role in moving us forward off the quote cap. For the first time, I think we actually all agree that the legislature is actually considering the economic wealth of our community, taking a step forwards towards our school funding on how much economic support our local taxpayers are able to provide. Monroe will receive some additional funds this year and next year, which is showing a slight trend towards more equitable funding between districts. The exact amount we receive will not be known until October. We have to remember that additional funds are only promised for 2 years, and that can't project past, which is very unfortunate. The Fair School Funding Plan was for 6 years, where it has showed us, unfortunately, moving to full funding in year 6, but now, after 2, it still will not be fully funded. So that's kind of the negative part. It is being debated again by our representatives and our senators. Still, we can be thankful the state budget for education was moved in the right direction, even if just slightly. And it is for 22 and 23, years 22 and 23. Knowing this board and future board members and our treasurer, who's become quite the advocate, I think it's safe to say Columbus knows we are not going to end the knocking of the doors and conversations. So we will just keep on, and that's a pretty positive update. So
Good, thank you.
yep.
2.4, anything from MEA? No? Thank you, Mike. All right, moving on to section 3, communications, comments from the public. Seeing that we have one, I will read this paragraph. The Board of Education recognizes the value to school governance of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. The public may participate during comments from the public or when recognized by the board president or superintendent. Those wishing to address the board must fill out request forms provided at the meetings. These should be submitted to the treasurer before the meeting begins. Persons addressing the board must give his or her name and address. There will be a 3-minute limit for addressing the board. Such requests shall be subject to the approval of the superintendent and the board president. In order to permit the fair and orderly expression of such comment, the board shall provide a period of public participation at every regular meeting of the board and publish rules to govern such participation in board meetings. The presiding officer of each board meeting at which public participation is permitted shall administer the rules of the board for its conduct. Upon request to the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a disabled person to be able to participate in this activity. Executive sessions may be proposed at any time during the meeting by any board member for any purpose authorized by law, and per policy 0166, public complaints about district personnel may be heard in executive session. So with that being said, Melissa Bach? Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So moving on to section 4, treasurer's business. Mrs. Cahill, item 4.1.
Okay, first I'm asking the board to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on July 26, 2021.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Stone. Thank you, Mr. Guido. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
So moved.
Mr.
I thought we were going to discuss it. Sorry, I'm like thrown. I thought we were going to talk.
About the minutes?
Yeah. I'm like,
Oh,
I'm
this is
just
the-
so excited. I'm like,
That's the financial.
so moved, passed, aye, yes, no. I'm just so excited. I just started looking at the report, sorry. It's an aye for me, Holly.
Still is. It still is.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.2.
Next, I'm asking the board to approve my report for July 31st, 2021.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Here we go.
All right, Mrs. Cahill, you're on.
This is what I thought we were on.
I lost it. Okay,
Yeah, I do too.
I printed it off, but I have to read from here. So I'd like to report that general fund has $23.4 million at the end of July. and all funds have $35.9 million at the end of July. But we are at the first month of the year, and as you all pretty much know by now, there's nothing to report of a trend. It's not like we have a lot of data to project where we will be at the end of the year. And what I do in July and August is tweak the appropriations so that the permanent budget will be approved in September and the forecast will be approved in November. So we're working to get those numbers together right now. And what does what happened in July really say about the whole year? Not a whole lot. But so just keep that in mind. So that's really my report for now. And also about the grants. There's a lot of grants we're managing right now, and some we're closing for 21, and there'll be new funds that'll carry over in 22. And so we're trying to figure out, we'll be meeting on trying to figure out what, how we really want to spend those within the parameters they set. And so there's just a lot of, lot going on, but nothing to report now. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.3.
Next, I'm asking the board to approve the bond fund report for July 31st, 2021.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
I'd like to report there were no receipts or expenses during the month of July, and the current balance in the bond fund is $3,658,215.
All right. Any questions, Mr. Guido?
Everything where it's supposed to be?
Yes, it is.
So,
Any
Mr.
other-
Becker, you're learning, this is every month we ask the same question?
Yes.
We have for years now?
Yeah.
It's kind of a special question.
Somebody's got to take that over.
I know, when
though.
we're
I
not
will.
here, you all have to keep doing it, yeah. Gotta
will
keep
make
the
sure.
trend
We'll
going
explain that to you guys.
I will make sure that I ask that question.
and say it in the same voice, and, yeah.
Any other questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.4.
Okay. I'm asking the board to approve the property and liability rates and coverage through School Insurance Consortium for FY 2022.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.5.
I'm asking the board to approve an increase in the price of athletic season passes starting in FY '22.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
And I did report in the write-up of this item that prices have not increased since 2006. And it's based on, the state OSHA, how do you say that? OHSSA, yeah, increased the price from $6 to $8 per ticket, and that required us to increase our passes, so.
And you said the last time we had a pricing or an increase was 2006 on our season passes?
Yes, yes.
Any ticket.
Any ticket, yeah.
Yes,
So,
or any ticket, yeah.
yes.
Okay. Any questions?
This is not going to cover all athletics. That's not what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get the tickets more in line with
Yes,
our district, right?
yes. It would cover supplies, equipment, and that kind of thing. It doesn't cover coaches or anything like that, but we have lost revenue from the pandemic, and so there's a lot of reasons, and things are going up, so,
And it's in line with all the other districts in our
yes.
league.
Yes, yes. There's
$6 for tickets period
Yeah.
compared to most of the seasons.
Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.6.
I'm asking the board to approve the 5-year contract with SWOCA for voice over IP services.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
Just, you had sent an email earlier this week about this. I mean, it's a little out of the norm to approve a 5-year contract without it going out for bid, is that
Yes,
right?
We have not done that. We've really never done that, but when I really looked at the prices, we had been paying for phones at the price they're quoting for in 2026, and we paid for them in 2017. So they have gone down, the price has gone down, and we're part of Consortium, and the price, the whole system is shared by a number of schools. So I think it was fine to do this.
Is there a reason they're switching it to a 5-year? What was our previous contract?
It's every year.
It's
So
just-
I don't know if they're locking in a rate, and they, I think they're locking in a rate for us, and maybe they were that DataServe worked with them, because DataServe's behind the scenes, and maybe they're wanting to lock in a rate too.
Any other questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.7.
I'm asking the board to approve an additional $100,000 in funds for the broadband grant.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Yeah, and part of this additional award is because the state is realizing that we're working together to provide the internet services to those 2 trailer parks. And so they're giving us more money to do that.
Good.
Does this give all of our districts broadband use? All of our area?
What did you say?
Does this take care of all of our area?
Or just
Well,
those spots?
it's really, we have broadband here, well, we have internet here, but the 2 trailer parks didn't have
Right.
access, and it's supposed to take, well, it's not all of the trailer parks. I think there's just really some of the places, the houses, because they were telling me it wasn't 100% reaching the whole trailer park. But it's reaching as far as they can.
Are you asking about if all of our students
Yes.
are covered
all
somehow
our
in
students
Monroe, the
covered?
whole district? Do all of our students
Oh,
have
yeah.
access
Yes,
somehow?
our students.
I wouldn't say 100%, but those 2 areas, it will cover a big majority of kids in that area that do not have access. So that's what the grant is covering, and they're trying to get that. So our goal would be eventually to get it for everyone. So I know
What's it take to do it?
hotspots for kids that are
Yes.
doing online as well.
Okay.
So.
So let me clarify a little bit more. The grant not only pays for this service, but the biggest portion of the funds are going to be used to put 2 towers up on the Butler Tech campuses at the public safety complex at 747 and Route 4, and then the D. Russell Lee campus as well. The FCC is only allowing a certain, width of the broadband to be released. One of the concerns that the carriers had, Verizon, T-Mobile, everybody, is that we were just giving away cell service, and it could be used for whatever they wanted to, but the goal of the grant is to provide broadband service for educational purposes. There is a lock where you can only visit certain sites. That was one of my concerns. Are they going to be connecting to PlayStation and staying up till 4 a.m. instead of doing their homework? It only allows certain sites to be accessed, so it is very targeted for that. It's available for only students, so Uncle Johnny who comes and moves in with the family is not going to be going to inappropriate sites in the middle of the night or using it for whatever they want to. It is very specific about that, but the biggest money is for that. Our goal is with this program is a broad reach for possibly all the county, and use it as a model to expand throughout the state of Ohio and possibly the United States. We as Monroe and at Butler Tech as well pay whatever our dollar amount is that we pay for internet service and broadband service every month, and we get a certain amount of data that we're allowed to use on that. And from my understanding is every district is only using a very small percent of the allowed data that we have. So it just goes unused. And so our argument has always been that allowing the access isn't costing the carriers any more money because they're already getting paid for that service. But if you're in a low-income neighborhood or a household, however you want to put it, and don't have access to even a cell phone, we all saw what hybrid learning and when we were shut down and everybody was at home, how important broadband is. We were able to purchase the little cards or whatever, those hotspots, but it just they don't reach near the amount of people that it needs to. So really the biggest expense for the grant, Tom, is to put the towers up, right?
Makes sense.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I agree.
Any other questions, comments? Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.8.
I'm asking the board to approve the CCIP grant awards, which total $881,978 for fiscal year 2022, and the new funds to count for those.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions?
Is all this money already earmarked?
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
at this point, yeah. Yep, and it's part of the 3.8 million.
I was going to say these
Mrs.
aren't
Stone
forever.
reported.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.9.
Next, I'm asking the board to approve ESSER ARP 3 grant award, which is $1,799,788, and it must be all encumbered by June 30th, 2024.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
I don't think we're having any problem getting rid of that, will we?
Well, if you look
It's
at,
actually not as easy as you
Oh,
would
yeah.
think, just because it's not sustainable because it's a one-time grant, so you can't, it's earmarked for certain, there's always strings attached when there's federal dollars, but you can't do something that's going to be sustained beyond 2024 because the money will be gone, so. Yes, we will be able to find use for it to help our kids out, but we've
Yes.
joked that it's never been such a struggle to spend that kind of money.
Well, and that's a conversation we've spent a decent amount of time on, Robert,
Yes.
before you were here about, and I'm sure Lebanon did as well, but we would love to hire more support staff and counseling services, and that's really what the premise of this grant was for, but they only promise it for a short period of time, so you can't expand personnel.
Yeah, because then at the end of that grant, you're either making
Yeah.
a decision to dip into your general fund or
Yeah.
lay people off, and then you're added with expenses for unemployment and everything else. So we've had to be creative, and we've done some, I think they've come up with a really good plan to help out, our kids. But there is some flexibility as we move through the next couple of years as things come up to rearrange things.
Okay.
any other questions? Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.10.
I'm asking the board to approve high schools that work and making middle grades work grant for $8,000.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 4.11.
I'm asking the board to approve REA for a cybersecurity audit for $12,000 for 2022.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
And I'd like to report this grant is this is being paid for out of the SR 3 grant. And it's perfectly allowable in that grant.
That's great use. Have we had one before? Have we done a cybersecurity audit?
No, we've never had a
Never?
cybersecurity. Yeah, and it's looking at all the doors that may be open in our whole technology system that may expose us to cyber attacks.
I think we should do this whether we have a grant or not. So that's great that we can use money to pay for that. But
Yep.
I would say I'd keep that going.
I mean, the Department of Defense or whatever it was just got hacked, so,
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Mr. Guy. We want to get out.
Pipeline.
But you're right.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.12.
I'm asking the board to accept a commercial paper report for investments as of June 30th, 2021.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
This is a report that's required by law, state law, and it's reporting that we've received $15,000 in interest from commercial paper. And that's part of $260,000 that we received in interest in all our investments. Thank you.
Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.13.
I'm asking the board to approve Fund 200-900-022 for the class of 22 and Fund 200-9023 for the class of 23.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Any questions?
And we're catching up because we kind of had, with the pandemic and quarantine, there was not a lot going on in the park. There was not a lot going on in the student funds, and they were all kind of like just on hold. And you know how the seniors tried to do the best they could, but anyway, things are starting to pick up again. And anyway, so thank you for approving those.
Good. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.14.
Okay, last, I'm asking you to approve a request from the 2021 class president, Lillian Volt, to move $1,500 to the class of 22 and the remaining amount to the class of 23. And everybody will be set up for the next prom and
So the remaining amount to 2023 is $13,700?
yes,
That's a
an
nice
amount
amount.
in 2023.
Yeah.
Expendable.
Yeah. So the seniors will get $1,500, which they're not funding the prom. The juniors are, so the juniors will get the most.
The 13,000.
That's great.
Good.
That's how it works.
That's very generous.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mrs. Cahill.
Thank you.
Moving on to Section 5, Superintendent's Personnel Business.
First, section 5.1 resignations. We have one resignation. They're still an employee with us, just not going to be coaching for us right now.
Okay. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.2.
Hiring, we have a number of positions, one certified teacher in that list. I don't believe, sorry, Mr. Grant, I don't believe we have any in the crowd
No
today.
pins today? No pins today. All right. We'll get them next time. All right. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. And item 5.3.
Hiring of substitutes.
We have 3 subs. We would like that list to grow every week or every month. We are in desperate need in every area, so.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.4.
5.4 extracurricular contracts, just a number of supplemental contracts there.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
And I'll abstain.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Item 5.5. Oh, motion carried. Sorry.
Okay.
I got you.
Thank you. I'm already thinking of the next step, 5.5.
See, that's what happens. We get excited.
Yeah,
We're
we
looking
get
forward.
moving.
Yeah.
Item 5.5.
Paraprofessional extra supervision. These are paraprofessionals that work with us, but due to the just the kids' school days, we have something that need to have some additional time added onto their day. So that's what this piece is for supervision purposes.
Okay. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
I will say, I asked one time, what are they doing in this time? What is it? And so I think it was Jesse showed me a video of what they're actually doing. And it was just interesting because I thought, well, they're really doing a lot because those kids would be lost without them. So anyway, good. Just if you ever want to know what people are doing, he's showing you a video.
Thank you. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And item 5.6.
Salary degree increase. We have a number of teachers who have worked hard, continuing their education, so they are moving up a column. So congratulations to them. That's a big step.
Yep, absolutely. May I have a motion, please?
So moved?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And section 6, Superintendent's Other Business, item 6.1.
Donations, we have a number of very generous donations.
Yes, we do.
From, community, parents, sponsors, businesses, so we always appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions?
Thanks for the donations.
Yes, that's
A lot of them.
that's the longest list I've seen of donations in a very long time. So thank you very much.
Huge spreadsheet. Tim, Mr. Kellis shared.
You
with
love
us.
spreadsheets, don't you, Holly?
Yes.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And item 6.2.
This is just to accept the ALC pricing for this school year.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions?
Are you shocked there's not an increase?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, with
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really surprised there's no increase, especially with everything going up
that's what I thought.
in today's world. All right. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 6.3.
This is just the staffing agreement with Maxim for substitute nurses.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. And this is the same rate as 2021, it looks like.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 6.4.
We have a contract with Warren County ESC. It's a learning center for Warren students, Monroe students that attend.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Kayal, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 6.5.
This is a contract with Woven Traditions, who we are partnering with this year for some staff training the entire staff over a couple of days.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions?
This was the gentleman came
Yes.
to the opening day and shared a little bit. He's a very nice guy.
And this is one of the things we'll be paying out of ESSER
Yes,
funds?
correct.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Mrs. Kayal, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. And item 6.6.
We have a one-year contract with Butler County ESC for POP license for the BLA students.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
Wait, who was second?
Mr. Leeds?
Okay, thank you.
Another good use of the ESSER fund.
Yes. And this is for 185 licenses? Is that correct, is what I see?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Kayal, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 6.7.
This is to approve a 5-year contract with National High School Federation School Broadcast Program. What this is, it is actually zero cost to the district. It is a service that they will provide all of the equipment for streaming of extracurricular activities. And Mr. Silverman's done a really good job researching this. And not only will it not cost us anything, it will replace Huddle, which we had about a $3,000 cost annually for that. So it actually will save money, and it does a really good job of streaming extracurricular activities. And parents can buy a subscription, a monthly or annual subscription to watch school events. The only reason that there's a contract, if we were to quit the contract quit in the middle of the contract, then we would be responsible for a portion of the equipment that they provide for us.
I have a question. Would this be, I know it says specifically for athletic events, extracurriculars, would also be able to be utilized for any of our dramas or anything of that nature?
No, but graduation. I mean,
Graduation?
other things that happen in the gym, but it's in the gym and in the
In
stadium.
the stadium,
Yeah,
okay.
but if
So
you
it's-
do graduation.
Because they're gonna have cameras and equipment
Yes.
set up there.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
We're going to be committed for 5 years.
Has this been put out to the parents that they can buy into this?
I don't know, I don't think they've done it yet until it's approved, and then he'll start getting stuff out. They actually, they had another company come in and do it just for the first home football game this Friday until we get this approved and get everything set up.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Do we know a ballpark of what the subscription cost will be? Like, has it already been announced or?
$15 a month and $70 a year
Oh, that's
if
great.
you want to.
That's good.
At least that's what it is now. We don't know. They will
Especially
raise
if it's really cold or really rainy or
Yeah.
really hot.
And they do it's a very professional
Yeah.
broadcast.
That's great.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I talked to Eric briefly a little bit on Friday night. I think he said that we can also sell advertising on that,
There's a lot.
so,
Yes.
as well. So that's actually a positive as well. So,
There's others that do it, but they don't share the profit. And so, and this was vetted by OHSAA.
yes.
Good job, Holly.
One more time, Holly. What you said?
It's not OSHA this
It's not
time.
We're not climbing ladders.
It's the other O's, yes, it's the other group.
Any other questions? Mrs. Kayal, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And item 6.8.
This is just the approval of the MOU with the MEA for the evaluation system that has been modified, and it is being implemented this year due to Ohio Revised Code, OTIS version 2.0. Principals are all very excited for this, as well as the teachers, right? They're not listening.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Thank you, Mr. Gutter. Yes. Any questions? Mrs. Gale, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone. Aye. And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And item 6.9.
We just, as an annual thing, it's required for us to approve bus routes for the year. I'm sure they were changing up until about 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. So.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Any questions?
Okay, do we dare ask, is it going well?
It has been going really well. Yeah, I mean, the first few days, transportation is always, they're behind because honestly, I think one of the biggest challenges is not just, the drivers are being extra careful to make sure they get all the spots and kids are learning where to sit and everything, but parents have not been trained on the in and out of the parking lots and drop-off procedures, so they're fighting each other, and within a week or so, they start to, each day has gotten better and better. Like, speaking from personal experience, dropping my 2 daughters off at the junior high in their district, the parents don't know the procedure yet, and I get very angry every morning when they're not following the proper procedures, and it's taking forever to get through the parking lot, so they'll get trained.
Hey, Jesse, how is speaking of bus routes, how has the new app and everything? Is that going well?
We ran into a postcard, and all bus times are accessible through an app and the website.
Okay.
Seems to be going great right now. The issue, one of the issues this time here, it syncs overnight. So if they make a change this afternoon, it syncs. They have our buildings connected to essentially, you log in with your number, the buildings that have access to see all of the issues. So we really scaled what was originally something with parents and also the communication with the buildings.
Okay.
It's a good thing for that.
All right, good, thank you. Mrs. Kale, or any other questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 6.10.
Just the calendar of upcoming events.
Okay. And item 6.11.
Approve the contract with the one-to-one nurse that's the same one we talked about.
Yes, that was the addition
Yep.
to the agenda. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Guido,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. And then Section 7, Superintendent's update.
All right, well, thank you. I just have a few items here that I want to talk about for this evening. First of all, just the first week of school last week, teachers came in Monday. The administrative team did a phenomenal job planning those first 3 days. They were very productive, time well spent, with a lot of training, a lot of time for them to get ready for the kids. And then so when the kids came on Thursday, it was a very smooth start. Kids, you could tell, were very excited to be back, happy, just loved seeing everybody in the hallways, and it was really nice to see everybody back. First football game was on Friday, no capacity at the outdoor stadium, which was really nice. It was a great atmosphere, and we got a big win, which was great. I came back to the girls soccer game Saturday. They also got a win, so it was a good weekend for athletics here. Building update. When I got hired, I know we talked about one of the issues was the growing population and the crowded, especially in the secondary area as well. Being here for a few weeks now, that's almost an understatement, to be honest. They are really, especially the high school. Mr. Prohaska and I had a conversation about that this morning. It's just, they're bursting at the seams. At one point, there is, I believe it's in the media center, they have dividers up where half of it's a health room and half of it's for ELL instruction, which is not an ideal situation, but they do a phenomenal job of creating spaces out of space that isn't there. So I talked to the board earlier about this, that since you guys got bumped 3 years ago with the OFCC project, we still know that that's in the near future, but it's not going to help with any issues in the next couple of years. So Mr. Catanzaro and I had a conversation today. The updated numbers for the state share for OFCC are coming out, supposed to be out September 1st. And once we get that percentage, we have talked about some ideas. I think that we should plan maybe a work session to talk about ideas moving forward, just because I think there's some things that we could do to alleviate the issues with the state funding. If we did some things to lock it in, it would be really great, because right now the state funding percentage is really it's a really nice percentage, and if we could lock that in, that would be a great thing to do. So once we get that, we can reach out, maybe we can have a work session to talk about some things. The trick is to add space without actually adding space, which means we cannot add square footage to the building, or it takes away from the money that we would receive from the state. So we don't want to do that. So just something to keep thoughts on moving forward in the next few months. Once we get those numbers, we can make some discussions about that. So then, I'm sure the topic everybody wants to hear about, starting school, and a lot of the districts in the news around us with whether they're requiring masks or not requiring masks. And our stance right now has been strongly recommending. And I know Tom talked a lot about legislation that's out there that may take it out of our hands completely. I would doubt any of those bills would go through with their current language. Some of them are ridiculous, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that portions of them wouldn't go through that would tie our hands to do whatever anyway. So we will definitely keep an eye on those things. So I just want to say it is a serious issue, and it's not anything I take lightly. We talk about it daily, and I struggle with it. It's difficult. It's very personal, emotional for every family, and every family differs about kind of how they feel about it. And so whatever decision we decide as a school district, it's going to upset some people. So we don't take that lightly. So I just wanted to let you know that. I do want to share some local data that we have. I'm not going to get into a debate on the effectiveness of masks or all that kind of stuff, because we're not going to change anybody's minds on that. I just want to share the parameters that we have to work with as a school district moving forward with the Ohio Health Department and the local health department. So the Ohio Health Department came out about 2 weeks ago, and they updated their quarantine and isolation procedures, and I shared that with all the families. And whatever your opinion is on masks and vaccines, again, I'm not going to debate that. The Ohio Department of Health made it very clear. If you wear a mask or you get a vaccine, you'll be able to stay in school. It'll keep you from getting quarantined in most circumstances. There's still the lunch room where kids that don't have masks on are sitting next to each other, and we are working on some ideas to get them spread out more. I know that the high school has some of the kids eating in the gym still, but it's that's just a difficult situation. I would love to never have to quarantine any students, but just with the structures of the building right now, that's not possible. So I think the one thing we can all agree on is that we all kind of hate wearing masks. Nobody wants to wear them anymore, but it is, with the parameters that they gave us, it's the best way for kids to stay in school. So we are going to continue to strongly recommend it. 3 days into school here, I wanted to share that we had 4 elementary students and 1 high school student that were positive, and it was all before school started, so we didn't have any quarantines with those. Today we had our first 2 cases, 1 high school student and 1 junior high student. It did result in 4 or 5 quarantines, which, again, I don't want anyone quarantined, but the reason those students were quarantined is they had not got a vaccine or they were not wearing a mask. And I just want to share that to let people know, whatever your thoughts are, that if you're not wearing a mask or you don't have a vaccine, there is a good chance that you will end up in quarantine. I'm going to talk about a neighboring district. My daughters go to school in a neighboring district, and their mask usage is very, very low. I've dropped my kids off for a week and a half now, and I haven't seen a single mask. And so their quarantine numbers, as of Friday, were 180 kids were in quarantine, and over the weekend they quarantined an additional 80. So they are really struggling. Their 712 population has a very, very low population of students that got the vaccine. So they are really struggling. Monroe, I collected data today. We had, just this morning we had 41% of our students K-6 wearing masks, which is good. That will, keep those kids in school. And 23% at the 7-12 grade level were wearing masks today. I would like it higher, just because like I said, I don't want anybody not being in school because they're quarantined. Or obviously I don't want it to spread and anyone getting sick. Monroe has done a much better job of kids wearing masks, and they are the 2nd highest vaccination rate in the county for 7-12. It was 39% towards the end of July, and I don't know if you've read in the newspaper lately that ramping up the school vaccinations in the 7-12, grade 12 and up, it's increased a lot. So that is a good sign, because again, that will keep kids in school. My own daughter, I've gotten 2 phone calls already that she was exposed and would have had to quarantine had she not had her vaccination. I know, again, that's a very personal decision for every family, but I sat down with my young kids, because they're at the low end of it. They're 12 and 13, and they both wanted it, because my oldest missed 2 weeks of basketball last year, and she's like, I'm not missing games, I'm not missing school. And so they decided they wanted it, and I think it's been a good decision for them. So, but again, that's every family's decision, and if that's something you don't want, there are other options. So as we move through this, we're only in day 3, so we have been pretty fortunate. Numbers are low. I don't like the numbers, like I shared with some of the other districts around us, of the high number of quarantines, but we'll continue to monitor, we'll continue to collect data. Actually, tomorrow I am meeting, Mr. Prohaska has arranged for me to meet with all of the seniors that are involved in any fall activity, band, choir, student council, all the athletic programs, and I just want to have a conversation with them and say, this is your senior year. They're missing things that they could have, because it's their senior year, they're not going to get back. Again, a neighboring district, they had to cancel their football game Friday night, and it's easy to be an armchair quarterback, but looking at how that happened, it could have easily been prevented. So I want to lay it out there for those seniors so they know. And I know how high school works. When the seniors start doing it, it catches on. So hopefully, again, we can do what we can to keep our kids in school. I have been, like I talked about, adjusting. We look at things that we're doing, and we'll continue to adjust. We're looking at some options to possibly spread out even more in the cafeteria. I personally, I wear a mask when I'm in the building with the students every day. I just want to, if I'm strongly suggesting it to them, I think that I need to be a role model and show that. And I'll be honest, parent pointed that out to me at an open house, and I said, "You're right. You are absolutely right. I need to set the example." And I've been wearing one every day since. So, and trust me, nobody hates wearing them more than me. I can't. But if that's what I need to do to keep the kids here, I will do it. So, we talked about there was a pep rally Friday, which was great. Again, walking in the gym, there's a lot of kids in there. We talked today. It's not a good idea right now. So I don't want to just cancel things and take things away from the kids. So we talked about what can we do instead. So the remaining pep rallies, we're going to do them outside on the bleachers. So kids can spread out more. It's out there in the fresh air. So I don't want to keep saying, no, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. The kids have been through too much of that. I want to say, we may not be able to do it the way we've always done it. How can we adjust so they can experience? I know the next big question is going to be homecoming. So how can we do that and do it safely for the kids? So, I do want to end the last thing I wanted to, well, not the last, second to last thing. If we see a different trend right now, I'm very happy with the way things are going. Again, I still would like kids, protecting themselves, so they're staying here in school. If we were to get in a situation where we had to, we were quarantining 10, 15, 20% of our kids, I would come to you guys and say, I think we need to recommend it for masks for everybody for a short period of time so we get through this and things slow down a little bit. I hope we don't get there. The data is not showing it for us right now, but I'll continue to monitor it. I look at it every single day. So, and then the last thing I want to say is that I shared with this. It's very personal. It's very emotional for people. But I have read horror stories in many districts about board meetings, about death threats against the superintendents and board members, about decisions they've made. Every single person that I've spoke to here in Monroe, whether they agree with what we're doing or they don't agree with what we're doing, has been polite. They've listened. We've had civil conversations. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I want to thank them for that. So, we're not going to make everybody happy. Not every time that I have the conversation am I giving the answer that they want, but they've always been polite. So I appreciate that. And that's all I have.
That's it. Thank you very much.
And so just to clarify, you're following the health department's quarantine recommendations, right?
Yes.
And so we're not adding to that, or we're not doing
We
it?
are. So oddly enough, the Ohio Department of Health, they came out with those guidelines. And there was some discussion with the local health department that had some differing views. Well, that commissioner has since left, so we don't really have any local guidance. I have been fortunate enough that I have a connection with the Warren County Health Department, and we are partially in Warren County. So even before she left, I've been attending both meetings, just because there's no such thing as getting too much information. And they had very differing approaches to it, so I have been fortunate there. So yes, the local health department has been helping. Warren County more recently has been helping, but yes, we are following what they're suggesting. We're not going above and beyond. But if you're concerned and you want to make sure and you want your student in a mask, we absolutely support it. We are strongly suggesting it. But like I said, it's very personal for some people, and they are not going to do it. They don't want to do it. And if that's their choice, right now, that's where we're at.
Before we adjourn, comments from the board. We will start with you, Mr. Leeds.
Yeah, Robert, I just want to thank you and your administrative team for getting school going and keeping these, and thinking outside the box to keep these kids in school. And I appreciate you going to these extra meetings. And the way we're getting information from the legislature, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
As to what we're going to do and what we're not going to do.
Right.
So thank you for trying to decipher what they mean,
Yes.
because it's difficult.
Yeah.
But again, anything we can do on the board to assist you guys, don't be afraid to ask. That's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Guido?
I do want to apologize. I think this is the first board meeting I've ever shown up in shorts, so I had a golf outing today. It was Children's Hospital golf outing, so I was a little uncomfortable, so apologize for
How was
that.
your score? Did we ask?
We did okay. I had a much better team than me, so. Robert, welcome. This was your first meeting. Welcome to Monroe.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything you've done and look forward to working with you, even though it's a shorter time than you may have wanted, but I appreciate that.
We'll make it
Jesse, I want to give you a shout out. This is probably the smoothest start that I can remember since you've been here. So usually when we don't get emails or calls, that means things have ran very smoothly. So you've done a great job with the staff and everything. Again, challenges that we don't even know, I'm sure. So great job, Jesse. I wanted to take a second to thank everybody for the emails that we've got. We've got, as Robert said, we've got significant numbers on both sides of this masking issue. We do read them all. I don't know that I have responded to every single one of them, but we do read them, and they've all been respectful. I haven't felt threatened or anything from that. It's I would say this is a situation that changes not daily, but sometimes by the hour. So Robert, you've done a great job of keeping us involved, and Nancy, I'm sure, has worked very hard, again, that we're not aware of. So thanks for all you do, Nancy. And thanks to everybody for really kind of having this open dialogue. I think you really put it the way that I feel, which is, I got vaccinated for a reason. It's so I wouldn't have to wear these masks. But the reality is that the way the health department is putting these quarantines in is, if I had kids that were still in school and they were in extracurricular activities or had a test or something they needed to be do, I would be telling them, you better wear that mask, because unless you want to be on the sidelines, or not even on the sidelines, but at home listening to the game, then you need to put that mask on. So, but I appreciate our stance too of not mandating it. So it's just I hope we don't have to do it. So, but I also hope that people take it seriously and wear the mask as well. Kind of touched on it. I did not fill my petition out to run for the board again. I think that deadline just recently passed, and wasn't for any reason other than I think it's time. I think that I was excited to see new faces step up in Monroe. I've said all along that we live in the best city in the country, that sometimes change is good and different perspectives will continue to put things on the right path, and I look forward to seeing what the school boards in the future do. So we have a couple people in here that have pulled. If you guys want to reach out, I'm more than willing to talk to either one of you, and wish you the best of luck. That's it.
Thank you, Brett. Mr. Stone?
I think you read my notes.
I think you did.
I literally do. I'm
I saw him watching
like,
that.
check. Did you see that? I know.
I echo what Brett Guido said. But I also want to add, I got to represent the board at opening, I call it opening day. It sounds like the Reds games, but I was very, I didn't record it. I hope it was recorded, maybe. But you did a great job, Robert, there was just a lot of enthusiasm and energy in the auditorium. And it was just really neat to see. That was really cool. And I thought there was a lot of staff enthusiasm. That made me very excited because I love the start of school. Smooth start. I think we were all kind of commenting, besides a lot of emails and concerns about the mask issue. It's not about our bus was late, or just some of the things that seem to bring out the frustrations in the beginning. And I also think we have a really great parent community. They just are very positive, and they know that we have our teachers who work hard, and everybody kind of has the best interest of the kids at heart. So I think we have a very patient community. I really do. I think they sense that we all are pulling together, and I just think the way you are expressing and explaining, even in a public meeting, kind of your decision making, that's really a powerful tool to help us all understand that. So I encourage you to keep that up. That's awesome. I think people really appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
That's it from you?
Yeah.
All right. Again, Brett stole my thunder. Welcome to Monroe, your first official school board meeting here, so welcome. Looking forward to many more working with you together. It was nice to see everyone in the stadium on Friday night. It was great. I know I talked to Eric already. I don't know if anyone, but I think a lot of people didn't hear me announcing the game, so I think he told you. So I think there might
We
be.
were really happy about that.
I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of people were happy about that.
Were you here?
But it was great to see a Hornets win, first home game, and the girls won, and I believe the boys soccer team tied with what, 6 seconds left in the game against Senwick, I believe.
Yes, it
That's
was
what I
very
heard.
close to the end.
So such a successful weekend in Monroe country. So welcome back, teachers and administrators. Good to see everyone's smiling faces, and I'm looking forward to a successful year. And to echo what these guys said about the smooth, I think the implementation of not having the parents fill out the paperwork every single year, I've not seen one email about complaining about having to fill out paperwork every single year.
We
So
were the
that's a-
ones that used to complain the most. You remember, like, why do we have to do this every year?
So that was one of the best
Oh,
things. It's probably one of the best things as a board I think we have done is implemented that procedure. So that was a great thing. Other than that, thank you to everyone in attendance. And I wish everyone a successful and happy school year. So with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn at 7:41 PM. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. And thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stone,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Guido, and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.